Welcome to The Explainer. You know, we're about to tackle a question that you've probably asked yourself a million times. Who am I, really? And we're going to search for the answer by peeling back all those layers of identity using some pretty profound wisdom from Eastern philosophy as our guide.
Okay, let's just dive right in, because we're starting with a paradox that every single one of us lives with, right? Your body is constantly changing. Your thoughts, your feelings, they just come and go. And yet, there's this feeling of you that's always there. So what is that constant you?
And this leads us right into what's called the I paradox. It's this really fascinating conflict between our ever-changing world and that persistent, unchanging sense of self.
I mean, really think about it for a second. The body you had when you were 5, it's gone. The one you had at 20, completely different cells now. But that feeling, that core sense of I-ness, that has been the one constant through it all, hasn't it? It almost feels like it exists totally separate from our physical body.
So here's the really crucial point. If everything we normally identify with, our body, our thoughts, our stuff, even our emotions, if all of that is in constant motion, then, according to this philosophy, it simply cannot be our true eternal self.
Now, this is where things get really interesting, because this confusion, this mix-up between our true self and our temporary self, well, that's identified as the root cause of basically all human suffering. This is such an ancient, powerful idea. The sage Patanjali said our problems start the second we mistakenly believe we are the things we're just experiencing. It's like we confuse the person watching the movie with the movie itself. And that's where all the trouble begins.
And this little story just illustrates our delusion perfectly. We think we own our possessions, our ideas, our identities. But our attachment to them actually has us on a leash, forcing us to chase after them endlessly. So, who's really chasing whom?
So by identifying with things that are, by their very nature, not permanent, we basically trap ourselves. We get stuck in this state of constant anxiety and dissatisfaction, always afraid of losing something that was never going to last forever anyway.
Okay, so if we're stuck in this chase, how do we get out? Well, the way out is a practice. It's about learning to make a clear distinction between the observer and the thing being observed.
And the key here, this is so important, isn't to fight your thoughts or push them away. It's just to realize that they're separate from you. You know, you are the sky, and your thoughts, they're just clouds passing through. You are not the clouds.
And it's really just a simple, intellectual move you can make at any moment. You just notice a thought pop up, then you separate from it. You declare, nope, that's not me. I'm the one watching this. And then you just rest in that quiet, stable awareness that's doing the watching. Okay, but now we're going to go even deeper, because it turns out that even the things we think are us, like our senses, or even our mind, are also just objects being observed from somewhere else.
So let's start with something really basic, our eyes. They seem to be our primary seer, right? They're taking in the whole world around us. But are they the real seer?
But hang on a second. Think about this question. How do you know that you have eyes? You don't use another pair of eyes to see them. This question forces us to look one layer deeper.
Your mind. That's what perceives your sense organs. And what this means is that your eyes aren't the ultimate seer at all. They're also just something that is being seen or observed by your mind. They're part of the show, not the audience.
And here it is, the final crucial step. If you can notice your own thoughts, if you can recognize the activity of your own mind, then something else has to be watching it. The mind itself is just another object being observed.
You know, what's so fascinating is how modern science has kind of mirrored this journey inward. We went from seeing the world as solid stuff, to tiny atoms, to realizing those atoms are just waves of energy. But this ancient wisdom takes that final step, saying that energy isn't the source, it's just a manifestation of an underlying consciousness.
So, we've peeled back the body, the senses, even the mind, so what's left? What is this ultimate observer? What is this real self?
Well, this isn't something you have to go out and get. According to this view, it's the fundamental reality of what you already are. A reality of pure existence, consciousness, and bliss that's everywhere, all the time. So the goal of a practice like meditation isn't to force the mind to be quiet. It's more about just untangling it from all its attachments so it can naturally become still and clear. Like a perfectly calm lake, it can then reflect the vast sky that was always above it.
Now, I know this can all sound a little abstract, a little out there,
But this philosophy points to a very real, very immediate experience as the proof that you're on the right track.
The payoff isn't some far-off goal. It's peace, right here, right now. The moment you successfully separate the observer from the observed, you are instantly freed from the burden of past regrets and future worries, because you realize you are not those thoughts.
And that leaves us with the central question of this entire practice. It's not a riddle you solve with your intellect. It's an inquiry you experience for yourself. The more you just watch, the more you start to realize who or what is actually doing the watching.